Hi, Laura.
Hi, Rohan.
I think maybe just to start off, we'll hear a little bit about where you've come from.
Lovely. Hello, everybody. It's lovely to be here. Geographically speaking, I come from Epping. So I grew up in Epping, which is kind of leafy suburbs of Sydney in the northwest-ish. And now I come from Marrickville. Grew up in Epping, lived there until I was 18, and then went further afield and came back and further and came back, and yeah.
And what about your family? What were they like?
Wonderful. I'm a huge fan of my family. So I grew up with my mum and dad and my sister, who is still just my favourite person ever, older sister. They're wonderful. My dad worked as an architect for my whole life, or kind of growing up, and then retrained, and now he's an artist living in the Blue Mountains with my mum. And my mum did a bunch of different things. When I was a kid, she managed a children's bookshop for all of my childhood, which was just the best growing up experience ever, and hanging out in the back room of the bookshop in Beecroft. And then she worked for our church, and she has been a grief counsellor, and she has lectured in pastoral care and written some books, and now she's the chair of a big mission organisation. So a really interesting kind of career and wonderful people. My sister is just the best, and she's a teacher, and she has 2 little boys and a husband. They all now live in the Blue Mountains, so they've made the migration up the hill, and they're like outraged that we don't live up there. And I have to remind them, we all started here. So growing up, there was a lot of church. It was a very Christian family, which we loved. So we went to Sunday school, and we went to youth group, and then I taught Sunday school, and we were really involved. We went to Sydney Anglican Church in the hills, in West Bennett Hills. And it was a wonderful time of growing up. Lots of church. All of my best friends were church people. So that was kind of growing up.
What was the kind of vibe of that community?
Yeah, a good question. So the Sydney Anglican Church is much more conservative than other Anglican churches, and also other churches in Sydney. And it was kind of a church that didn't think of itself as very Sydney Anglican, but I think looking back now, it was pretty Sydney Anglican. But it was actually an interesting mix, because there were the kind of older congregation in the morning that my grandma went to as well, and then there was the youth stuff in the evening on a Sunday, and youth groups and stuff. And it was interesting because the older congregation were a little less conservative than the youth kind of department, which I think happens. So, for example, in the morning, sometimes my mum would preach. We would have female preachers, whereas in the evenings, or at least at the youth group, there was a kind of, once the boys reach a certain age, even a youth group talk can't happen from a female person.
Oh, really?
So it was quite, conservative in that way. But it was wonderful. It was quite a large church. When I was a kid, it was mostly about Sunday school, and then light wafers and cordial after. That was the highlight.
But how was that for you growing up, as a young woman in that community, and the messages that you received along those lines?
Conflicting.
Yeah.
I think I always had a really strong sense from my family and from my school of, we are feminist, of course we are, and that's really important, and women can do whatever men can do, and I just was, even as a teenager, particularly as a teenager maybe, it just seemed ridiculous that there were different rules. And also because I knew Christian women who were so brilliant and so educated and so gifted in teaching and in leadership, that to think that they couldn't progress to a certain, even to a minister, because of their gender was insane. We had lots of conversations at home about it. My parents, were very, it's called egalitarian as opposed to complementarian. That was kind of the big debate that was happening. It still happens, but that was happening. Like, we talked about it at home, and they came down very egalitarian, which is, shared gender roles. So from an early age that made no sense. Also in the youth group, there were wonderful things about it. I loved it. I brought all of my friends from high school. But it also was pretty purity culture-ish, and there were rules about you can't wear spaghetti straps on camp, or for particular talks they'd split up the boys and the girls would kind of have "do not lead your brother astray" talks. I don't know what the boys heard about. So my best friends during primary school were the boys at church, and even Sunday school was split into boys and girls. But I went to the boys one because I was like, why would I not? These are all of my friends.
How did that go down?
Well, I think my dad was the Sunday school teacher, so it was fine. But it was just the most natural thing to me. So I think that taught me a really important lesson about debates and conversations that can happen in a Christian community, and that's okay, and that's good, and we can have different opinions, and we can talk about it, and even within one community there can be very different opinions. So I think that was a really valuable thing. I was a bit of a nerd about it. For my year 12 society and culture major work, did a big investigation into the impact of feminism on the Anglican Church, so I was right in it. But I loved it. It was intellectually interesting to me, and personally, I have such strong views about this. What do other people think, and how do I make sense of that?
One of the things that happens when you grow up in a Christian family, and you go to church every week, and it's something that you just happens, and then at some point you sort of have to decide if that's something that you want to keep doing.
Yes.
Did you have a moment like that?
Yeah, I had a really clear one, actually. So I was a society and culture nerd, but I was also a modern history nerd, and I was really we did a big study on South Africa and Nelson Mandela, and I did a gap year in South Africa. So the year after school I went to South Africa, and I volunteered at a school in a township just outside of Cape Town, and it was an amazing experience. But it was also, I was 18 and a bit, and I'd never really been that far, and certainly not by myself. So I arrived in the youth hostel in Cape Town with, the other people who were living there, and we have those conversations of who are you, and where do you come from, and what's your thing? And I remember saying, I'm a Christian, I go to church, and I remember really clearly someone was like, why? What's the point? And I was like, oh my gosh, what is the point? I don't know. That was a very specific moment, but I think it was also a kind of, here I am out in the world, what do I believe in? How do I make sense of that, and how do I put that together? And from there, it's an interesting one, because I think I always had this narrative of I lost my faith, and then I read everything, and I put it back together, and I just happened to come to Christianity. But I think, firstly, of course I did, but also there are interacting timelines. I think I came back from South Africa, and I was kind of having this big faith questions in my mind, but I also at that time was a youth leader, and I started teaching in Sunday school, and I think it's not nearly as clear as looking back. I'm like, oh yeah, that was my atheist moment. No, it wasn't. It was lots of things happening all at one time in life, which I think is how it usually happens.
Sort of like a deconstruction and reconstruction at the same time.
Yeah, and also just chugging along. So a lot of that happening, and then for a quick moment I got really into apologetics, which I'm no longer that into. So it was a kind of putting it all together moment. And then so after South Africa, I went to uni, and I'll just chug along. I went to uni and I studied international development, because that kind of spurred that interest for me being in South Africa. And I started going to different churches, so I went to Church of Christ for a while, and that was a good experience as well. Lots of community, but also some tricky things in that church and in my family. So kind of different things along the way. I then spent a year in Indonesia after uni with Uniting World, who then I started working for. And I think that experience was interesting as well. So I was in a far west village in Bali. And
actually, before you tell that story, you might need to explain what Uniting World is.
Oh, great point. So Uniting World is the Aid and Development and Global Partnerships Organisation of the Uniting Church. I can come back to that. But in Indonesia, they didn't have 50 different choices of denominations. They just like the Christian church in Bali, and I went to that, and that was really cool to think we don't actually, there's so much that we agree on, so maybe I'll just be a Christian. So there was unpacking and repacking and deconstructing and reconstructing and a lot of that, and it was kind of a bit messy, and it's still happening, and it still happened from that
ongoing.
point as well.
You no longer attend a Sydney Anglican Church,
nope.
clearly.
Nope.
But I wonder, what are some of the things that you've brought from that community that still inform your faith today?
Yeah, I think there are lots that I can see, and probably even more that I can't see. There's a lot of value and significance placed on the Bible, which I think I've taken. Through all those years of Sunday school, got to know the Bible really well, which I appreciate. That looks different for me now. I see the Bible in a very different way. But I think having that framework and that grounding of scripture and stories and that was really important. I think certainly the community and the kids stuff, and I did a lot of children's ministry stuff there, which I really loved. So I think there's certainly things that I've brought from there. But there's also still some unpacking of particular theologies or just understandings that still there will be something that blows in my mind. It's I didn't realize I was hanging on to that particular idea until I think that there are other ways of seeing it, and I'm amazed.
You decided to study international development. Was that something that you did because of your experience in South Africa, or was there something in your faith community growing up that, that's quite early, and I think from, I've known you for some time, and it's a big part of who you are and your story.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
I think possibly partly some church stuff. At church, we were always talking about, there was a missionary wall, so we were always thinking about people in different parts of the world. I remember maybe at one of the youth group talks, there was a youth pastor who was speaking, and I was in that 17, 18-year-old time where now I work with those kids of that age, and I see myself in that so much. But there was a youth talk that was you can spend your whole life thinking, what do I do? What's the right path? But it's actually really simple. You just love people and you try to make the world a better place. And if you follow that, you'll be doing good. And I think that was really grounding. Fun fact, that youth pastor is actually John Owen, who now is the CEO of Wayside Chapel, many years ago.
Yes.
25 years ago, maybe. So I think that was really formative for me at that point. I think our family has a really strong sense of social justice. And I actually started off doing social science, because that's kind of roughly what I was interested in, and then transferred into international development. It was a wonderful course. It was at Macquarie, and it was mostly a course in how good intentions can go bad, and how not to do that, which was really good for me.
Yeah.
Because I was very gung-ho, I just want to make the world a better
full
place.
Full of good intentions.
Exactly, full of good intentions, and to realize that worldwide organizations have good intentions and they can still kind of mess it up. So be careful, here are the things to follow. And that really linked me a lot with Uniting World as well, because I saw them as following the really good practice in international development, which is like partnership. And like, don't go in thinking that you have the answers, because you don't. Go in and see, how can we work together and how can we benefit from each other in that partnership, in that relationship? And that will set the tone for how we make the world a better place together.
So Uniting World partners with local churches to do a lot of the work. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So my work at Uniting World, so when I got back from Indonesia, I started there. It was quite varied. So I, for a while, oversaw the short trips from churches program, and then the volunteer program, and then I started doing project management, particularly education projects in India. So that was a really good example. I worked with our partners at the Church of North India, particularly in the eastern Himalayas around Darjeeling and Amritsar and near Kolkata.
What sort of projects were they?
So they were a range of things. They a lot of it was working with kids and kind of after school tutoring programs, or supporting kids to stay in school and do well in school. In Darjeeling, or like a teeny tiny town near Darjeeling, there was a school that the church had started up that we supported the establishment of that school, because in that particular area, a lot of the kids, particularly the girls, were getting really good jobs in Kolkata, but it was actually human trafficking. So that was addressing that. In Amritsar, it was a range of amazing programs that were kind of vocation support. There was a little bit of microfinance happening at the time. So a real range of things depending on what was needed in the communities. And working, I mean, that was the most amazing job. I loved it so much. And I think it taught me a lot about the value of representing something bigger than yourself. Because I would find myself, doing a visit to a particular village that the program was being run out, and they would welcome me and maybe a colleague or two and partners from the Church of North India. Everyone in the village would come out and everything would stop for the whole day, and the women would be in the most amazing saris dancing me into the village, and they would be playing drums and playing horns, and I was like 24 years old, like who the heck am I? I'm just from Epping. But I think no, I'm here because of the Uniting Church and because of this partnership, because there was something that came long before me and will continue after me. And that was, an amazing thing to be part of.
You are now a school teacher, though.
Yes.
So how did that happen?
Well, I was loving work at Uniting World, and I was doing project management, which was kind of what I had dreamed to be in, and I loved it. I had a lot of imposter syndrome, which I think was valid. Like I was 25, like I was still learning a lot of things, and the whole way, people put so much faith in me, and that was amazing. But most of the job was also in the Sydney office writing reports for the government and justifying why we should have this teeny tiny little bit of funding. And, I was on the lookout for something that was a little bit more frontline and a little bit more practical and outdoorsy, just less in the office. And I had started doing some training with Uniting World that was in child protection for a lot of our partners, partly because we had just been through the Royal Commission and had so many things that we had learned, and we kind of were saying to them, we don't want you guys to fall, we want to help you learn from what we've done really badly as a whole church, as a whole Christian church. And so, I really loved that work, and I loved the training, and I loved the interaction, and I loved writing a program, and that was cool. So that was in the back of my mind. And then we actually ran a school program in the school where I work now. And that was another one of those click moments of, as soon as we got there, I was like, oh no, this is the thing. This is going to change a lot of things. And literally that night, I was looking at master's degrees to shift. So then I kept working at Uniting World for a little bit, and I did my Master of Teaching. And just as soon as I started teaching, I loved it. Yeah, it was exactly the right move.
Where do you teach?
I teach at Ravenswood, which is a United Church school on the North Shore. Mm-hmm. And I've taught there for 8 years, maybe, a long time.
Ravenswood is it's a private school. Yeah. It's kind of fancy.
It's quite fancy.
The kids that you're teaching, could not be more different from a lot of the kids that you would have been interacting with overseas.
Yes, a child in a village.
Tell me about that. What do you think?
I kind of fell into Ravenswood, to be honest. I love it. I love working there. When I was still doing my master's, I did some casual teaching there, and then I was offered a job for term 4, and then the next year I got a job that was a mix of teaching and also overseeing the social justice work of the school. Every day I'm like, how does this fit with me also being so passionate about public education?
Yeah.
And I went to public schools and I love that, and we will send Ruby to public schools, and that's so important. I think there is a role to play as a teacher in a school like Ravenswood. Partly, kids are kids. Kids are always going to have struggles and challenges and skills, and there's not a whole lot that's different in the kid themselves, but the world that they live in is very different. And I think as long as I'm there, which I don't think will be forever, and I keep trying to be brave enough to make the move, and I'm prepared, and can technically work in a public school now. I think it's also good and important to be a voice into that world of social justice, and how to reminding kids that we do live in this really beautiful bubble, but it's not the world, and how do we get outside of that, and how do we think beyond that as well. So it's on my mind a lot, but I think while I'm there I can do some really good stuff. I teach different things, but I teach geography and society and culture and studies of religion, but mostly I've taught religious education at Ravenswood, which I also didn't really plan to do, but have ended up really loving it. And I think as a uniting church school, it's a really distinct way to teach as well. So I don't think that I could teach Christian studies at an Anglican school, because that's a very different thing. But at a uniting church school, it's a school-developed curriculum, and it's a really beautiful program of looking at Christianity, certainly, and social justice and ethics and the life of Jesus and what that means for what we do in the world, but also lots of world religion. And I'm able to teach about affirming theology and what that looks like, and to be in a place where I can teach that, not as this is what everyone thinks and this is the only way to look at things, but to actually kind of speak to kids about there are different ways of seeing things, and Christians are diverse, and that's important. I really appreciate and value.
This morning you picked the reading, so James chapter 2, verses 14 to 26.
Yes.
Why did you pick that one?
For a couple of reasons. It's kind of chaotic. The first half is really lovely and really simple, and then he starts talking about Abraham, and I love it. I'll get into that, but partly the book of James I just really love because my grandma loved it. She was a real straight shooter, and it's a straight shooter book. It doesn't faff about, and my sister loves it as well. And that bit about it's not just what you think, it's not just your faith, it's what you do, of course. And it kind of challenges lots of the theology that I grew up with as well, in interesting ways, that you actually have to do good. That's part of it, which I really appreciate. And then comes along Abraham, and I kind of love that as well, because the passage is saying, love and do good, and look, Abraham did this wonderful thing. What Abraham did was almost kill his son because God told him to, and that's so complicated. And that's a story that I teach my year 8s. So last week I taught that story to my year 8 class.
What do you tell them?
I tell them, I get so excited about it. I tell them, this story is going to really make you feel some feelings, and I want you to feel all of those feelings. And we're going to work through this story, and we're going to look at different ways of seeing it. But by the end of the lesson, you might still feel those complicated feelings, because I know this story really well, and I have really complicated feelings about it. And so we read the story where Abraham doesn't even flinch. Like God says, okay, this kid that you've been waiting for so long, now please sacrifice him. And then the passage is like, and Abraham woke up early the next day and gathered the things, and like, it's not. And the kids love that there's a really awkward interaction where Isaac is like, Dad, you've got everything for the sacrifice, but you forgot the animal. And Abraham's like, God will provide, which I love, and the kids love. So then we look at, we just stop and we think about our feelings and we talk about our feelings. And then we look at, well, what are different ways that people can see this story? So a lot of people, and I think the Bible sees it as, well, look, he had so much faith that he almost killed his son, and like God swept in at the last moment. That's the end of that story. So that's one way of seeing it. But some people will look at it as like, well, he had blind faith, and like, what a terrible thing to have almost done. And we look at it as, there's a really interesting take that I like, where you get the kids to then look at all of the passages in the Old Testament that talk about how child sacrifice is definitely not okay. And like, all of our enemies do this child sacrifice, and isn't that terrible? And we would never do that. And so we look at that and see, maybe the most surprising thing about this reading for the readers of the time was not that God asked Abraham to do this thing, but that he didn't end up having to do it. So we talk about that, and then, yeah, we feel all of our feelings again. And we kind of just leave it as that, and then we carry on and we talk about how these stories are full of real people who are complicated and do good things and do bad things and do complicated things, and God is kind of complicated too. But then in this reading, it's like so clear that like, nope, it was about the faith, and that was a really good thing. And I love how kind of chaotic that feels. And then he talks about Rahab, who like is also amazing, and kind of amazing that she is one of the stories in the Old Testament, a sex worker who saves people through her bravery, and yeah, she is remembered throughout the scriptures as well. So I think, to me, that's just such a beautiful encapsulation of how I see the Bible these days, which is as an incarnation of people trying to grapple with God and trying to understand God, and it's complicated, and we have to take the Bible for what it is, not what we want it to be. And that's been informed by a lot of books and reading, and Robin Whittaker has a really wonderful book, Even the Devil Quotes Scripture.
Yeah.
Dr. Pete Enns, The Bible Tells Me So. Like, there's a lot of thought that kind of has helped me figure that out. And I think that's part of that deconstruction, reconstruction still very much happening. Yeah, that's why I chose that verse. There's a lot in it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of almost in conversation with itself.
Yeah.
And that question of faith and works is really live and has been really controversial, like across Christian history.
Yes.
And it all sort of comes together in this reading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on some readings, it's pretty simple. It's like, love people, like just love people. Just don't worry about it, just love. But then there's layers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do your students react to that?
They love it. They get frustrated and they get confused. And I think for me to model, like, that's okay. Sometimes we can just be confused and frustrated, and that's a valid feeling to explore. And me as your religion teacher is saying, like, you can feel that. That's good. That's okay. And we wrestle with the text and the that Jewish idea of like the good is in the wrestle. Is really important. And then we carry it on. We like come back to class the next week and we have another go at another story, and we talk about Jacob and Esau, which that's a complicated one. So yeah, we explore it together, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the other things that you are probably known for here is playing the drums.
Yeah. Boom, boom.
Tell me about that. When did you start playing those? And what does that represent for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I started playing when I was in about year 3 or year 4, because my mum was the parent manager of the school concert band, and they needed a drummer, and she was like, I have a child. I actually played the violin at the time as well, but I dropped that. So I've been playing for a while. It's so funny as well, because I was a really shy kid. I was really shy and introverted, and I just didn't want to be noticed. And when you're a drummer, that's really hard. And so they would always be like, Laura, do a drum solo. And I'd be like, no, thank you. But I think I love playing the drums. Once it gets to a point where you just kind of can sit back and enjoy it, it's such a beautiful thing to do. I played in a band a little bit in uni, and mostly I've just played at church. Have played at church.
But also during protests.
And also during protests, and also Mardi Gras, and it's been an amazing thing to be part of. That it's because of this place. It's because we get out there on the streets and we make a noise, and we show people that we're there and that we care about things, and we make a big bang while we do it. But it's wonderful. It's I think the first protest I ever went to, I was playing drums. Certainly the first Mardi Gras I ever went to, even as an observer, was marching in the march, playing the drums, which was incredible as well. There was a march maybe a couple of years ago where we had, I can't remember I think it was maybe a pro-Palestine march. And as we were walking back to the bus with all of the drums, Rad said to me, oh, Laura, this is a real ministry of yours. And I was like, what? I guess it is. And I think it is a ministry of the church. And I also just really love seeing people drum for the first time and encouraging them that you don't have to be an amazing drummer, you just have to roughly stay in time.
You're a very good teacher.
And I love that it brings us together, and I love that it, particularly in the Mardi Gras, which I'm trying to step back from a little bit, just because it doesn't need to be about me. But just the way that people in the crowd clock you when they realise that you're there drumming in support as a church full of queer people, it's incredible. Yeah, it's an amazing thing to see.
And how did you become part of this community?
Well, so when I got back from Indonesia, which was in 2012, I moved to the inner west, and I was looking for a new church, and I was working at Uniting World, and at the time a bunch of people from Uniting World also came to this church. So they were like, come to church with us, and I said, okay, it will be my first stop, which I think is a classic story of coming to Lark. And then I just stayed because I loved it. But it was very different. That was 14 years ago. Yeah. And we had wooden pews, and we had John Hurt was the minister at the time, who was a real force, is a real force. It was much smaller. There were no kids at all. And I came in the evenings. I think there was a small morning congregation as well. But it was maybe just a year or two after the community had moved from Ultimo to Leichhardt as well. So it was, an interesting time to be here.
How's it changed over the years?
It has changed in a lot of ways, but also the character of Leichhardt has always been the same. It's always been an affirming church. It's always been a social justice forward church. We have way more people. We have lots of children. I think it's just flourished so much. There was a long period where we didn't have a minister, and it was lay-led, and it was the council was kind of the leadership of the church, which was hard, but also, I can say this, I wasn't on the council. I think maybe James was. It was a wonderful time of seeing we are the church. We are this place, and we can do this. But then obviously with Adrian and Rads, they're just the best. And so that's been wonderful as well. Yeah.
Sorry. When you look forward, among this community, what are your hopes?
What I see at the moment is just so beautiful, and I think if we can keep doing what we're doing, that's a wonderful thing. particularly the kids stuff has been amazing to see. When Ruby, like, even when she can just see that we're in Leichhardt, she starts chanting, Anna, 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 which is like the cutest thing in the world. So to see that sense of community and belonging, even in my little girl who's like just starting to say words, is a beautiful thing. I think, we always need to make sure that it happens sustainably as well. So I think that's always kind of on my mind about church, and how do we look after each other well? How do we remember that we are the church as all of us? And how do we love our ministers well? How do we love each other well? Yeah, if we can just keep on doing that and forgiving each other. And there was a little bit of time where I didn't come to Luck, and I did go to a few other churches and came back. But I think that was a time where I was wanting church to kind of be everything, and I didn't feel like church was everything, because I had been at churches where like my whole friend group was church, and I think I was looking for something like that. But I think it taught me a really important lesson, which is church doesn't have to be everything. Like, it doesn't have to fill every single one of your cups, but it can be a really beautiful thing. So I think for me it's important to know, I don't know, don't expect absolutely everything of this place, but feed into it, and it will be a beautiful place for everybody.
One of the things that we always ask during a Tapestry of Faith is, if you could meet God face to face right now, what question would you ask?
I said to Rohan this morning, flip, that was the one I forgot to think about.
Yeah, it's the only one that you know is definitely coming.
Exactly. I'm quite curious, because I teach a lot about religion and different religions. I'm curious to ask God what she thinks of us and how we've tried to connect with her. I think that's an interesting thing. Like, how do you think we're doing? I think not great, but I think my faith and my understanding of God and connecting with God is changed so much. But now I think, I wonder what God thinks of all of us as well.
Do we have time for questions, Adrian, or maybe one or two? Is there any questions out there for Laura?
Maggie.
When you're teaching religion to the students, are you really surprised sometimes with what they come up with? Just wondering how it is for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think often the most insightful questions come from the really little ones. So for a quick minute, I was teaching a year 2 class, and then like the next period I go to my year 12s, and always the year 2s, I mean, they would have like lots of things to say, and some of them would be on topic, but the ones that were on topic were really interesting and good questions. I think I'm always impressed and kind of, less surprised these days, but really impressed when they have the ability to see nuance and to understand different perspectives. And that's taken me a long time to get to, I think. And that's been because of, really good thinkers that I'm reading, or the atonement class with Adrian was mind-blowing for me to think there are different ways of seeing this big question that I thought was the most clear-cut thing you could ever think. And to share that with kids, to say there are different ways of seeing this, and for them to be like, yep, we love that, we see that, that's great, and take that with them. And sometimes for kids to then come back, after they graduate and say, I want to catch up with you because I went to this other church and they were saying something different to what you have always said. Can we talk about that? Because it seems like there are different ways of seeing that. And for them to know that, to see that, not to dismiss whatever they've heard out there, but to think, I know there are different ways of seeing this, and I know there's someone that I can talk to about that. That's amazing. That's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Maybe just one more?
Hi, it's nice to hear your story. I'm wondering what your faith and your personal connection to God looks like now, that you've had such a big journey of exploring faith in so many ways and in so many locations. What does your personal connection to God look like on a daily basis?
That's a good and big question. It looks very different at different times. My faith has always been a maybe equal mix of faith and doubt. And I think when I was a kid, I was scared of that because I was told, like, don't ask that question, or that's not, like, ooh, doubt is the worst thing that could ever happen to a person. But now I think, like, no, what a beautiful thing. The way I see it, and even the way I talk to my kids about it, is, you know, rather than faith being held in a tightly clenched fist, I want to hold my faith in an open hand and allow, like, experience in life and ways of thinking to influence that in really beautiful ways. I think a lot of that, like, Laura of my childhood would be, like, horrified about. But I think, yeah, that's good. That means that things are changing in interesting ways. So I think because of the faith and doubt, there's actually been something that's really helped me along the way, which is there's a guy called Mike McHargue who used to host a podcast called The Liturgists and then wrote a few books. But he had this concept, he went through a similar deconstruction, but he had this concept of axioms of faith. I don't know if anyone's ever come across them, but they're a way of seeing things when you're, like, at your most doubtful, what can you still kind of hang on to? And I found that so helpful. So as an example that I'll kind of paraphrase is, the Bible is at least, so it's a series of at least and even if. So the Bible is at least a collection of people over thousands of years trying to understand and grapple with who God is and how we live in the world together. Even if that's all the Bible is, it's still a worthwhile text to understand. There's a whole series of them that have been really helpful to me on my days where I'm like, none of this is true, which, like, happens all the time. I think, well, even if, you know, church is just a gathering of people who are motivated by the teachings of Jesus Christ and want to live them out and make the world a better place and love each other as a community, that's still worthwhile, like, turning up to. It doesn't actually depend on me and my individual faith on that day. So that's been really helpful for me. I think the way I see my faith now is this is the faith tradition that I was brought up in, that I understand and that connects me with God, and this is a story that I am willing to hitch my wagon to. And beyond that, I don't know, like, it's no longer my stress or worry to, like, make other people believe what I believe at all, and that was a big change. But for me, it's the thing that brings life, and even on the doubtiest of days, it's still a worthwhile thing to be part of.
Well, Laura, thank you so much
Thanks,
for
Rohan.
being part of the Tapestry of Faith this morning. Yeah,
Cool.
give it up for Laura.
Thank you.